You're listening to the Productive Therapist Podcast, the world's greatest and most brilliant resource for busy therapists who'd rather be laying on a beach in Hawaii. Each episode is packed with simple tips and inspiring insights from the Productive Therapist team to help you grow your practice and have fun doing it. So without further ado, let's help you get more done and have more fun.
Hello there. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Uriah. So happy to be chatting with you or sharing this content with you today. I had a chance to talk to a new colleague that I just met recently, and his name is David Sternberg. And since 2012, he has run a psychotherapy group practice in Washington, D.C. called DC Talk Therapy. And it started with one part-time therapist, and now he has 12 therapists and 2 full-time office administrators. Prior to starting DC Talk Therapy, David had a successful solo practice in Washington, D.C. for 10 years. In 2020, he started another business called Pen and Practice, where he helps therapists from all over the country with their writing needs. Very cool. David has a master's degree in social work from Florida State University and a bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Rochester. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. Hello, David. Welcome to the Productive Therapist Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to meet you. And I was telling you this before we hit record, but I was so happy that you reached out and suggested this topic because as we were chatting about this, I don't think enough people are talking about community networking, community marketing, and helping therapists understand how to do it. So just first of all, thank you for coming to me with the idea.
Yeah, of course. I love talking about community marketing. So happy to be here.
That's great. So for the audience, I would love to hear, and for myself actually, because we just have met recently, I would love to hear about you, your practice, and a little bit about your story.
Sure. So in 2012, I started a psychotherapy group practice in Washington, D.C. called DC Talk Therapy. I started the practice after being in solo practice for 10 years. And we now have 12 clinicians, including myself, and 2 full-time office administrators. We offer individual therapy and group therapy, and we see adults of all ages, but specialize in treating young adults, those in their 20s and 30s. We're an out-of-network practice, and we see clients in person and online.
That's fantastic. So you've been doing this for a while.
I have. So I started in solo practice, part-time solo practice in 2002. So it's hard to believe, but coming up 22 years now. So
22 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been around the block a few times.
I've been around the block a few times, and I think I've learned a few things too. So
that's great. That's great. This is a random question, but have you ever heard of the band DC Talk?
Well, it's interesting you say that because now I have.
Right.
I didn't until I started this practice, and then I would Google practice, and DC Talk would come up quite a bit. So
that's so funny. Yeah, I think it's a good name for your practice. I like that. Has that name worked out well for you?
It has. I came up with it. I wanted something that had DC or Washington DC in it. I wanted it to be place specific. And I liked talk therapy more so than psychotherapy. It sounded to me a little bit more approachable.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that. And did you pick that name quite a few years ago, I'm guessing? Was that 2012 or before?
That was 2012. Well, technically 2011, I picked it, and then we launched in 2012. Yeah.
That's great. Last year, I actually changed the name of my practice and completely did a rebrand because I started my group practice and named it after myself, which was not really intentional. There is a story behind that, but in any case, I named it Guilford Family Counseling, and that was fine. But after a number of years, I thought, I don't think my name needs to be on the door. So we rebranded it, and I chose something which I thought was fun. I still think it's fun, which is In Tune Family Counseling, and we help families, with getting in tune and attuned to each other.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And it's a whole music theme too in our counseling waiting room and whatnot. It's fun.
I like that.
Yeah. Names are important. They are for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me, what were some of your first experiences with community marketing? How did you get started with that?
Sure. So I started doing it 17 years ago. So in 2007, I had a part-time practice. So at the time, I was seeing, about 8 clients, maybe 10 clients a week. I was also working part-time at a hospital in DC, and I was looking to grow my practice. I really wanted it to be a full-time practice. And so I had this idea that, well, why don't I reach out to primary care doctors and psychiatrists, all within about a 2-mile radius of my office. I didn't want to go too far out. And so I just started cold calling them. I Googled them and got, names from the internet, and I just started calling them, and I had mixed success. I'll be honest. And that's part of my story too, is that you really have to be comfortable with rejection. And in fact, lots of rejection. So I started cold calling primary care doctors, psychiatrists, and I would introduce myself and tell them a little bit about who I was and my practice. And then I would say, can I come in to your office and meet with you and bring coffee or lunch or whatever you would like? A lot of them right off the bat said, no, I'm not interested. And that was the end of it. But I would say about 25% of them were open to it. And that number has pretty much been consistent over the years. About 1 out of 4 have been open to me coming in. And then I would say, that's great. Thank you so much. Where can I stop by and pick up lunch? And they tell me, and then I would do that and pick up lunch for the team. And then I would go in. And my thought always from the beginning would be to do a lot of listening, a lot less talking. I'm not a hard sell person. I don't like that done to me. And so I wanted to listen. I wanted to hear from them what they're hearing from their patients and how I could help them, how I could be a nice adjunct to the work that they were doing with their patients. And it just took off from there. I can go into a lot more detail if you like, but that's how it started.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely have some questions. So you were Googling and then cold calling and then making a sort of a soft pitch to just bring in lunch or coffee or snacks or something like that. And then would you sit down with whoever was available, or was it sometimes several providers? Did it vary?
It varied, right? And I learned very early on, you've got to be very flexible with your expectations. And so the first few times I did it, I thought, oh, well, I'll meet everyone in the practice. No,
they're all going to gather around.
Right. That rarely happened.
Right.
Most of the time, and I've done so many of these over the years, probably at this point, 40 or 50, something like that. But typically how it works is that a small number show up, and they show up on their schedule. So people come in and out throughout that hour that I blocked out. I would say, I'm here from 12 to 1, and whoever shows up, shows up. And so, a doctor or two would come in and grab lunch, and I'd have a short conversation with him or her. Same thing with a couple of the nurses, the techs, admin, and I talked to everyone who came in. I wasn't there just to talk to the doctors. I wanted to talk to everyone who was present, and again to hear from them and talk to them and tell them a little bit about how we could help. But I had to be very flexible with who showed up and for how long I got them, right? Oftentimes it was a minute or maybe 2 minutes. And again, it was asking them a lot of questions. What kinds of issues are you hearing from your patients? And sometimes they would say, well, we're hearing a fair amount of anxiety or marital discord, or, depression is on the rise, whatever it might be. We would talk about that a little bit. And then I would say, well, we have these therapists on staff, and these are their hours, and so on and so on. And the other thing that I learned early on is to prepare for basically the same 3 or 4 questions from
that's good to know.
From doctors. It was, do you accept insurance? Are you in network, I should say? Are you in network? And if so, what insurances do you contract with? What hours do you offer? Right? Where did you do your training? That was also a real big one because doctors, for them, that's a big part of their background.
Your pedigree,
Your
right?
pedigree. Where did
Sure.
you train? And then the other one was, what's your specialty?
Okay.
So they always wanted to know that, and so we have on our staff, an OCD expert, for example. We have a substance abuse specialist. We have a couple of trauma specialists. So I was able to let them know all of that. But I pretty quickly learned the doctors ask you the same 3 or 4 questions. So I was already prepared ahead of time each
That's
time
perfect.
I went into the office.
Sure. That's great. So what I'm hearing you saying is, first of all, you got to be okay with rejection on some level, especially if you're cold calling.
Yeah.
And to some degree, community networking, community marketing probably starts out with contacting people that you don't know, most likely, right?
Right.
So being okay with rejection. Then I heard you say be flexible with your expectations, especially if you're going into another provider's office.
Yep.
That seems important because you don't want to, well, you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment, and then not bring your best self or your best energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. And then, as I said, I was there for that full hour. And sometimes I've had literally 2 people show up.
Mm-hmm.
Other times, I remember years ago, I sat for 45 minutes with a staff of 8, which was fantastic, but
Sure.
that didn't happen that often. So you just never know exactly what's going to happen, but just be flexible in your expectations. And then I would always follow up afterwards. So one thing that I learned to do pretty quickly is get an email address from the doctors, nurses, as well as the admin. Oftentimes it was just an info@ email address,
Mm-hmm.
but I would always follow up the next day. Thank you so much for having me. It was great meeting you. I'd love to collaborate in the future. Something short,
Friendly.
and friendly, something
Sure.
like that. Yeah.
And would you bring in business cards or flyers, or what would you
Yep.
bring with you?
Yep. So I would bring in business cards, and then later, this was maybe 5 or 6 years into doing this, I created a 1-page bio sheet
Mm-hmm.
with information about each therapist and their picture. And so I thought this was a really good way to make it known who each therapist is and what their specialty area is. And so, and doctors would talk about, oh yeah, I've got your sheet right here, and I'm referring so and so to this therapist. And so they really appreciated that, I think. And so
That's great.
I think that the sort of unstated thing here is that you're solving a problem for primary care doctors. I've met so many doctors over the years who have said to me, this is great that you're here because I don't know who to refer to. I had one doctor years ago. He said, I just go down the Blue Cross list, and I'll just pull a name out of
Oh my
there
goodness.
and
Right.
right, and send the patient to that person. And he said, now that I've met you, I'm happy to send patients your way. And so, you're solving, it's a good way of looking at it. You're solving a problem for them. Most of them don't know
Mm-hmm.
therapists. They know other primary care doctors, they know other specialists within healthcare, but in terms of the mental health world, I think very few of them know us. And so, again, this was really helpful for them because of that.
Yeah, 2 things there come to mind. I mean, first of all, I love your approach of going in to listen and coming with the attitude of how can I help? What are your needs? What are your patients' needs? And how can we maybe fill in the gap there a little bit? I like that versus obviously like being a pharmaceutical rep that's coming in to sell and kind of wine and dine and schmooze somebody.
Right.
That's, much. That's an approach that I think a lot of providers would like guard against, right?
Exactly. I think most people think it's pretty distasteful, right? And so I
Absolutely.
never wanted to feel like I'm promoting myself or pushing myself. I'm here to educate and tell you that we're here as a resource, hopefully a helpful resource
Hmm.
for you and your patients. And that was the other thing too that I learned early on. You've got to call them patients. They're not clients. They may be
Yes.
clients to us.
That's a good
They,
point.
they they are patients to the doctors because that's how they refer
Right.
to the people that they serve.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Also, I think, I mean, things are changing, but some things stay the same. And I still think that providers want to refer to other professionals that they know, like, and trust as much as possible because it feels better. Because if
Absolutely.
I know you and I get a referral that's ideal for you, I'd love to be able to say, you should go talk to David. He's the
Yes.
best person for what you're needing versus like I picked a name out of a hat and
Right.
good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we all still appreciate and feel good about making those. I would call it a warm referral, right, or a warm handoff of some sort.
Yeah. So it's someone you already know, even just a little bit. And I think that always
Yes.
helps. And just in terms of flexibility, I can tell you another just quick story about that. So I called a doctor's office years ago and I said, I'm happy to come in, would love to meet for lunch. And the front desk person said, the doctor works through lunch. And I said, well, can I bring breakfast? And she said, well, he starts at 7 a.m. And I said,
Hmm.
okay, well, you know what? Would it be okay if I came in at 6:30? And she paused for a second. I think she was a little taken aback. And she said, yeah, I guess that would be okay. And so I was there with coffee and bagels at 6:30 and I had a nice conversation with him. And at 7 o'clock, he said, I got to go. I got patients to see. And he wound up being a really nice referral source for us. So again, flexibility in all kinds of
Hmm.
ways, I think is just really important here. I've networked with or I've done community marketing, I should say, with other professionals with a lot less success. So I've also done
Interesting.
community marketing with acupuncturists, massage therapists, nutritionists, psychiatric nurses, clergy,
Hmm.
and I've had a little bit of success with these professionals, not much. I would say the number one referral source by far, head and shoulders, is primary care doctors.
Isn't
Not
that
not
interesting?
even not
Yeah.
even psychiatrists. Psychiatrists
Hmm.
actually are a pretty distant number two, which is
Yeah.
surprising to me.
Yeah.
But in DC, at least, a fair number of the psychiatrists also provide therapy. So
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's part of the reason for
So they're
that.
not
And then
referring out as much.
they're
Hmm.
not referring out as much. Yeah.
I think it's definitely worth saying that, well, it's like with anything, with digital marketing, it's true as well, but you can do a lot of things, spend a lot of time, effort, and money with very little result if you're not smart and thoughtful about how you're networking. Because you could easily take bagels and cream cheese and coffee to like 20 different places, but if you don't do it thoughtfully and
Mhm.
strategically and also follow up, then you're just not going to get a very good return on your investment, so to speak.
Right. And the other thing I've learned is that you don't need a really high number or large number of doctors who refer to you. Um, we really have five solid referral sources, primary care doctors who refer to us. And because they refer regularly to us, we don't need a large number of
Because they
them.
see a lot
So
more patients than we see clients on a daily
exactly.
basis. Right.
That's right. That's right. So
Hmm.
once you get a handful of primary care doctors who know you and like you and have started referring, and then the patient goes back to the doctor and the doctor says, how did
Hmm.
it go with David? And oh, I really enjoy working with him. Then it really starts to snowball.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just builds from there. That's so good. I remember the day that I got an email from a local pediatrician who'd been referring, we've been cross referring for years, and it was a fantastic relationship. I got the email that she was retiring, and I was so sad because,
Yeah,
obviously you get connected to folks that you cross refer to
yeah,
and as colleagues, but also it takes effort to build those relationships over time.
it does.
So I realized I'm gonna have to start Not
Start
start
all
over,
over.
but I'm losing this one great referral source.
Mhm.
But for us, pediatricians have been really good referral sources because we've always worked with kids and teens primarily.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
And so just to put things in numbers, which may help
sure.
some of your listeners. So since 2012, when I started the practice, community marketing has generated a little over $2 million in sales. And in a typical year, about 20% of our clients come from community networking.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
mostly primary care doctors, but again, a few psychiatrist referrals and an acupuncturist or two and a nutritionist who refers to us from time to time. I would say about 80% come from primary care doctors, but you know, $2 million in sales, is not insignificant. And so, most people in our field, they do a lot of internet marketing, right? And
Hmm.
so that's the area where there's a lot of focus, and yet the thing that's I think really helped us the most over the years. Yes, we do internet marketing and AdWords and all that, but I think because we've done community networking and we've got solid relationships with lots of doctors and other professionals in the community, it has helped us immensely. And there's this idea of red ocean versus blue ocean that I only learned about, I don't know, a year or two ago. And it really makes sense in light of this, because so many of us in the mental health world focus so much on internet marketing. And that's the red ocean. That's where everyone's fighting over
Hmm.
clients, right? And this blue ocean over here is community marketing, where very few of us are engaging. And even colleagues I've told over the years about this and about how successful it's been, I'm not sure that they've taken me up on it. So
Right.
anyway, I would encourage your listeners to really get involved in it, because I think there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really good. I'm glad that you talked about the red ocean versus blue ocean. That was a good book. I really like that book. I read it a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good point, and it's fun. It's humorous to me that, like, in 2024, the way to stand out is to do something very old, right?
Yeah,
Almost
right.
almost timeless. Is
Yeah.
to, like, I mean, not quite door to door salesman, but to do something that is in a way not scalable, and it
Mhm.
takes more time and effort, but it's very powerful, and not a lot of people are doing it. So
Right.
I think that's great.
And we're relational. We're in the relationship business,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
why not build relationships with people in the community?
Absolutely. I
So,
was just thinking about that. I'm in a business complex, and I've been working in offices in a business complex for some time.
mhm.
And it tends to be like mortgage companies and CPAs and, retirement, like financial advisors. It's actually been great because I use the professionals in my building for
Mm,
CPA and for, retirement and investment
mm,
advisors and stuff like that. But if you find yourself in a location with complementary professionals,
yeah.
or it doesn't even have to be that. Everybody needs to refer to, a chiropractor at some point, or a painter,
Right.
or, fill in the blank.
Yep.
So even just meeting your neighbors or walking around where your office is and making connections is really good.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And just three points about community
Hmm.
marketing that I wanted to make here. So number one, the return on investment, the ROI on this has just been phenomenal. So since I started with community marketing, I've spent a little under $25,000, which has generated a little over $2 million in sales, which is just a phenomenal
I'll take that
return.
every
That's it.
day.
Yeah, right, right. And it's and then number two, again, like I mentioned earlier, very few colleagues do community marketing. It's still sort of a secret out there. And again, it's a way to have an advantage over what's becoming a very competitive, as I'm sure
It
you know,
is.
very competitive field. And then lastly, the third point is that I think when a client's primary care doctor refers to you, um, it has a very different feel. There's a lot of trust in there that the doctor has already sort of vetted you in some ways. And so what I've noticed over the years is that when we get a client who's been referred by their primary care doctor, they're ready to go. They're ready to schedule an appointment. They're not asking a million and one questions or dragging their feet, which sometimes happens when we get a referral from our AdWords campaign, for example. Oftentimes, if they get referred by their primary care doctor, they're ready to
It's done.
schedule.
They're
It's a
sold.
done it's a done
Yes.
deal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I'm so impressed that you tracked all those numbers, by the way. That's fantastic that you
We
know that.
yeah, we do
Yeah,
a pretty good job of tracking. Yeah.
that's excellent. So I do have a couple curiosity questions. The first
Sure.
one is this is kind of taking a step back, but I think it's helpful to talk about this. Why do you think more therapists don't do community marketing? What holds them back?
Yeah, so I have a couple of theories. I think number one is that we're largely a group of introverts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think it's scary for a lot of us to put ourselves out there. And yet I can tell you, I'm an introvert myself. Um, I, but I also learned the value of doing this, and I also enjoyed meeting new people. So literally anyone can do this. I mean, just because I've had some success with this doesn't mean I'm the only one. I feel like anyone can do this as long as they're willing to put themselves out there and again deal with a good amount of rejection. I can't overstate that because that does happen quite a bit. I think sometimes therapists associate any sort of promotional work as sleazy, and this is far from it, as I was talking about earlier. So I think that there's a little bit of a connotation with, well, if you're promoting your practice, talking about it, then there's a sort of a used car salesman feel to it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's certainly not the case. And as I mentioned earlier, most of us are in this field are introverts, or a lot of us are, and so I think there's a little bit of a fear of going out there and talking to people. So
That makes sense.
I think those because of those things, I think that tends to keep people from doing it. But again, I would really say, try it, put yourself out there, do it a few times. It's not as scary as you may think it is, and people, the offices that I've gone into, they've been welcoming, they've been accepting, they've enjoyed me coming in there and talk to them, or I should say listening to them, because who else is doing this, right?
Yeah, I think that's unique. Those points make a lot of sense. I identify as an introvert as well and have found success with community marketing. Two things that I think have helped me quite a bit is doing it one-on-one. I would say I've probably done less of what you described and more connecting with local professionals and meeting with them one-on-one, just
Mm-hmm.
like myself and the provider.
Mm-hmm.
That's worked well for me. And then also, I think this is probably pretty common that we don't like selling ourselves or talking about
Yeah,
ourselves as much.
right.
And so for me, and probably I'm guessing for you too, having a group practice and being able to promote and highlight other clinicians with specialties, we are
Yes.
a group. It just feels a bit better instead of you should send your patients to me.
Right.
It's just
Right.
easier for me personally.
Yes. Yes. And I'm much quicker to promote other staff than myself, certainly.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of listening, lots of questions that I would bring in for the office staff, and I think that again, I don't have a business background. Again, I'm an introvert, and so I really feel like lots of people can do this. It's just taking that first step, and the first step is contacting primary care doctors, contacting psychiatrists. And then what we've done over time is, so we have on our intake sheet, intake form, one of the questions is, who is your primary care doctor or psychiatrist? And can we get a release of information? And so then we've started contacting those providers. And so then it went from just cold calling these primary care doctors or psychiatrists to a much warmer call of, we have this mutual patient and I want to just check in with you after the first session, and that's how this has transitioned to some degree over the years, is let me just give you a 1-minute synopsis of this patient and the treatment plan going forward. And then at around the 12th session, 15th session, a second check-in.
That what you just described there is like a vastly underutilized approach. I don't want to call it a strategy or a technique. I don't think hardly anybody does that, but it's so useful to that busy doctor seeing a ton of patients to get an update from the behavioral health provider, whoever that might be, that is useful information for them, that doesn't cause them to have to do a lot of work. And they're immediately, and how many of those do they get from the therapist of their patients? Probably little to none. So they're like, I like this David Sternberg guy. He's really helpful to me in my work and my patients.
Right. Again, solving problems for them. And I had, to your point, I had one primary care doctor years ago. At the end of one of these calls, he said, this is amazing because in the past, I would send a patient to a therapist and I would never hear anything again. So thank you for this. I appreciate the information. And we would collaborate on the phone. I would want to get their take on the patient too. I was also very mindful of their time. I never wanted to take up. I always thought 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops. I do not want to take up. I know they're very busy people. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
That's great. I just have to, I was reminding myself, I was recollecting about a referral relationship that I built years ago. It was actually with a local psychologist who worked with teens and substance abuse. And we met. I went to his office and we had a good talk. And then within a couple of days, I wrote a handwritten card and I mailed it to him. And he talked about that afterwards, and we became friends after that too. And he said, nobody does this. Nobody sends a thank you card for just connecting. So that's something people can also do with the follow-up, right? I think you mentioned an email, but you could follow up in any number of ways. But a thoughtful card, it goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah, it does. It sends the message that I'm spending time and energy thinking about you. Right. And it's also very relational. And I think that doesn't happen that often anymore. And I think when it does, it really stands out.
So I have two more questions for you that I really want to hear your answer to. So the first one, because we're both group practice owners, and then a lot of folks listening to this likely are, and some are solo. But how have you gotten your clinicians involved in community networking and marketing? And if so, how has that experience been?
So I tried to get a few of them to do this early on. This was years and years ago. And it did not go well.
Okay.
I could tell both times that, I think we only did it twice, that the therapist felt very uncomfortable, did not want to be there. This was not something that they enjoyed.
Not a good fit.
Not a good fit. Not a good fit. And I talked about it both times with them afterwards, and they said, "Yeah, this is just not my thing, and I'd rather not do it again." I said, "Totally understandable. I get it." And so I dropped it after that. And I just, after those two experiences, I thought, I don't need them to do this, and clearly they're not comfortable doing it. At that point, I was comfortable with it. And so I just took it upon myself to go each and every time by myself. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's a good idea not to try to push those boulders up the hill, because unless somebody in your practice comes to you and says, I love networking.
Yes.
how can I help? Then
Right.
yes, sign
If
that person up.
exactly. If that had happened, then sure, I would
Hmm.
have, but I've
It doesn't
that
very often.
no, no, it does not. So,
I've had the same experience with, wanting to promote the clinicians in my practice by having them and helping them write blog posts for our website,
mhm.
and that's worked out reasonably well. But if you're not a writer and if you don't have like a strong desire to share a message,
Yeah,
you shouldn't do that. Somebody else should do it.
right.
It's just not. It's not worth the time and effort because it's not good align. It's not good alignment, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm. Right. And now I tell therapists when I hire them, your job is in many ways just very simple, right? Provide exceptional therapy, come to the meetings that we have, do your notes on time, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't have any other expectations or responsibilities for you.
So I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Actually, this is the second to last one. So if you were to move from DC to a completely new state, completely new area, and you were starting a brand new practice in 2024, would you do anything different? Or what would you do in terms of community networking or marketing?
Hmm. I would do a lot of the same things that I have done. I think one thing that I would do is I would start contacting primary care doctors and psychiatrists ahead of time and saying, I'm going to be moving to such and such city in a few months' time. Would love to set something up when I get there, so that I'm hitting the ground running when I get there versus
Hmm.
going there and then having to start going through that process. I think I would do a lot of the same. I think now that I have sort of this 15-second speech that I do with office staff, I've sort of bumbled my way through for a little while there, but sort of perfected something. And that's the other thing too that I forgot to mention earlier is you've got to be super nice to
Hmm.
the front desk staff.
Yes.
They deal with a lot of difficult stuff, difficult patients. They're oftentimes overworked, underpaid.
Hmm.
I feel like you've got to make friends with the office staff. And again, they are the gatekeepers to a lot of the other people you want to meet and talk to. So be incredibly nice and patient with them. But back to your question, I think in terms of starting over somewhere else, I would do a lot of the same things that I've done. And really, again, the focus being on primary care doctors. I've had some success with some other professionals. I may not even attempt in the beginning to reach out to psychiatrists,
Hmm.
which is interesting. It
Yeah.
seems counterintuitive.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think based on what you shared, I think that would doing the same things in a new place would probably get you very similar results
Mm-hmm.
to what you've achieved in
Mm-hmm.
your current practice. So that's good. And I love that because it's kind of like timeless, making connections with people, solving
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah.
making friends, and being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what marketing should be. I mean, obviously it's turned into this whole other thing of like trying to grab people's attention and all of this. It's gotten very, very noisy, but human connections bring a different quality of feeling and value. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really glad that we had this conversation. So if folks want to know more about your practice or anywhere you want to point them.
Sure, sure. So our practice is www.dc, as in Washington, D.C., dctalktherapy.com. And then I also have a side business that I started 3 years ago, maybe a little over 3 years ago, where I help other therapists from all over the country with their writing needs and community marketing needs. So I have a writing background. I love writing. I love editing. And so I do a lot of writing and editing for other therapists with regard to their website, their Psychology Today profile, things like that. So,
That's fantastic.
and the name of that business is Pen and Practice, PEN andpractice.com.
I think you have a thing with names. I like that one too.
Thank you
So
very
that's
much.
pen and and practice.com.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. And I'll put those links in the show notes so people can find those. What a great collection of skills and abilities you've developed, and thank you for sharing them with people too, especially here on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and hit the subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode. If you're looking for more personalized help, you can reach us through productivetherapist.com. Thanks so much for listening. We are Productive Therapist, and this is the podcast that helps therapists get more done and have more fun.